reborn.
Myths and mind rethought.
How many times? How many times do you have to hear it? How many times? Probably well over 200, right?
And the first time always happens as soon as you put your disc in the Wii console and your speakers are blown the fuck out.
You're like, what the fuck is going on? Why is it so loud?
Me playing this game as a child and in the living room at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Well, everyone, we are here today to talk about, a very specific game. Everybody knows it. It's Sonic and the Secret fucking Rings. Oh boy, there is a lot to say about this one. Some of it is mostly relegated to just general thoughts, and other parts are going to be full-on mental breakdown crash outs.
As any good 2000 Sonic game is, honestly.
Really. Truly.
Without further ado, let's just get right into it, shall we? So to recap, when we talked about Sonic 06, a little crucial fact was that during development of Sonic 06, the team to develop the game was split in half. The first half was dedicated to making the game on the Xbox 360 and PS3. The other half was dedicated to port Sonic 06 to the Wii. Yes, that's right. You heard it correctly, folks. Sonic and the Secret Rings started as a port of Sonic 06 to the Wii. I want you to think about that for a second here and really understand, can the Wii even run Sonic 06? Well, ostensibly, the answer to that is no, because they quickly found out that the Wii could not run the game at all. So they quickly changed gears and decided to use whatever budget they had to just make a whole new original project. Which, look, under like 9 times out of 10, I'd give that idea a thumbs up. No problem with that whatsoever. However, following that, the team left behind was still larger than any Sonic game had developing thus far. The project of Secret Rings would be developed by Yojiro Ogawa, who at the time was the head of Sonic Team. And the idea just kept expanding, as the game would end up having 2 play modes, Adventure Mode and Party Mode, with Sonic Team developing the Adventure Mode, and Party Mode would be outsourced to Now Production, who had previously worked with Sonic Team to develop Sonic Riders, and their most recent work having been Pac-Man World Repack 1 and 2.
Well, that's interesting that these guys are still around. That's pretty cool.
The game would also go through several name changes during its press cycle even. It was originally presented at E3 2006 as Sonic Wildfire, and then at the Nintendo press event as Hypersonic, then again as Wildfire in several following trailers. After E3, the name was changed to Sonic and the Secret of the Rings, after a little tweak to the final name to Sonic and the Secret Rings in August of 2006. And by the way, those trailers are still out there. You can still find the Sonic Wildfire trailers fairly easily.
Yeah, I've seen some of them before. They're just early concept footage of the game, or they're mostly just basic trailers that show Sonic flipping the Wii remote up and down. You know, you've seen those many times.
Oh, yeah. Growing up in the 2000s, many Sonic tubers would use them for eye catchers for their videos. Pretty nostalgic in my eyes.
Yeah.
While Sega preferred the name Wildfire over Secret Rings, they changed it because they felt Secret Rings better felt the setting of the Arabian Nights. And according to a former member of the Sonic social media team, Sergio Montalegre, Wildfire apparently was already a copyrighted name in Europe by another entity. So I guess Secret Ring couldn't have been avoided.
Unfortunately, it was inevitable, TM. The game's primary art inspirations came from Shadow of the Colossus, Prince of Persia, and God of War, the original trilogy. Ogawa also stated that the gameplay was inspired from his previous work of Panzer Dragoon, both games being on rails. And the Meikawa wrote the base plotline, and Ogawa wrote about half of it. So let's get the biggest elephant in the room about this whole fucking thing out of the way, because I don't want to waste any more time. If we're gonna be talking about Secret Rings, we gotta talk about its worst and most infamous aspect: the gameplay. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's you ever play a game that, you know, you may have a special fondness for, but then when it's time to, like, you know what, I really like this game, let me replay it. Oh, this was a bad idea.
Secret Rings is a game that functions in the most infuriating way humanly possible. The game is fully on rails. Now, in theory, this is not a bad idea. The problem is, this is 2006/7. It means that now that motion technology is a thing and the Wii is out, we have now decided that we do not need a thumbstick. The Wiimote is our controller. And we tilt left and right to turn left and right. It's bad.
Yes.
The level design is atrocious.
Yeah, on top of that, in order to make Sonic accelerate, you move the Wii remote forward away from you. To make him brake, push it back. And in theory, this works. In theory. The problem is that, as I put it in my notes, your mileage will vary on the responsiveness of this.
The game is not very playable. This is really the big problem with Secret Rings. Because I'm going to be completely honest with you. If we are talking about this game from everything but its gameplay, Secret Rings is actually a pretty decent experience. From a gameplay perspective, it's pretty atrocious. A lot of this could have been solved with the basic act of allowing you to use an analog stick and mapping everything to buttons and an analog stick. I think that actually would have improved the experience pretty significantly. The game would have been piss easy, but it actually means that you're able to interact with the game itself. Sega kind of learned this with Black Knight, but not entirely. And as a result, it results in a problem where Secret Rings as a game doesn't fundamentally work. And I think Sega also realized this. So they decided, what if this game had a leveling system and ability system? And what if Sonic was extremely fucking slow? Yes, you heard that right. In a Sonic game, Sonic, when you start the game, moves so pathetically slow, it's awful.
And as you said, it's largely due to the fact of the controls and the player basically needing to learn how to use the controls or even just how to respond to how the controls function, which is insane structure of level design and gameplay design.
And it makes it even worse that the game forces you to sit through every single tutorial section in order to actually gain full access to the rest of the game. There is a separate set of levels called the Lost Paralogs, I'm pretty sure it's what it's called, where you have to go ahead and basically do the most basic tutorials imaginable to show the game that you know what's going on. These are non-mandatory. They take up a significant amount of playtime, and when by significant, it may not seem like a lot, but you have to think about it. You have to load into the level, you have to complete the level, then you have to wait for the results screen, then you have to go back to the main menu after getting the XP to come through, and then you hear Make Believe's Reborn for the 50 billionth time as you're going through and trying to gain basic abilities. This is not fun. It is actively harmful to the experience because the game is just forcing you into tutorial sections for no fucking reason. It's really bad. It's a horrible fucking experience from that perspective. And it's even worse because the more that Sonic gets faster throughout the game as you obtain new abilities that increase his base speed, the more you start to realize that Sonic was actually not built to be fast in this game.
An insane thought to think of in a Sonic game, by the way.
Because Sonic is not built to actively have these on-rails controls, and the level design doesn't actually account for it most of the time. So sometimes you're blitzing through sections, and then you're just getting hit over and over and over again because you're too fast. And the controls already aren't responsive enough, so that when you try to move left or right and try and do something precise or brake on a dime, it doesn't fucking work. Of course it doesn't work. What do you mean you think this is gonna work just because, oh, you know, this is my video game that I bought, my $60 video game? Yeah, man. Of course it'll have working controls. No, it doesn't. It does not have working controls, actually.
Yeah, how foolish of you to think so. So let's break this down exactly what we mean by skills, abilities, level ups, etc. So as we sort of alluded to, once you progress through the stage, whichever stage you play, your aim is to collect rings and defeat enemies, which grant Sonic souls. Ending the stages will grant Sonic experience points based on how many rings and souls that were collected through the stage. And with enough experience, you will level up, which grants Sonic more points to equip skills, which are unlocked by spending soul points, a higher cap on the ring Sonic can hold, which I believe it starts from like 100, and you can max it out to like 999 typical stuff. And of course, increasing the soul gauge.
This is also a mechanic that you get after a certain point in this game, and you then unlock the 2 associated skills with it, which are Speed Break, Time Break.
The way to use these abilities are, once you get 50 points worth of souls, which most of the time is about half the soul gauges can hold, Sonic can expend them on these 2 abilities. Pressing up on the D-pad will use Speed Break, which Sonic can basically boost through the stage. It gives him minor invincibility. It lets him break certain objects and ignore hazards. Again, you can kind of think of this as like the basis of the boost ability that we would get in like Sonic Unleashed, for example, or at least like a very prototype idea of that, idea.
Yeah. Or, again, because of the way that Sonic Team was structured at the time, it was more of just like, I guess, like a concept they thought was cool. And alongside Dimps having the boost games and Rush and stuff like that, which, we'll talk about when we get there, eventually, like, causes this problem where, they're like, oh, well, what can we do with Sonic to make him go faster? We'll give him the boost. But again, and then pressing down on the D-pad lets Sonic use Time Break, which slows the stage down, gives Sonic more time to attack, evade hazards, explode other collectibles that otherwise would not be available to him. And that's really it. You don't really get much else. You have a large list of abilities that you can equip, but again, a lot of them are either very basic things like improving Sonic's baseline usability as a character. The ability to quick step, I'm pretty sure, is one of them. More rings, better homing attack.
I mean, it's kind of interesting to me how, like, we have this level up system, how, again, this is kind of a reoccurring theme of Sonic games in the 2000s, how they keep incorporating RPG elements into these games. And yes, there is the one game that hangs over us like a sword, and we'll get to that when we get to that. But combine that with Iizuka's comments on how he would like a Sonic RPG in the future. It's just kind of interesting how we keep getting this reoccurrence,
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that, like, I don't know if they're, like, fully all in on it at this point, but it feels like they're either trying to match what was going on in and around the era, or they were just, like, really compelled to do it because they felt like, oh, this gives players more choice. It, in fact, does not give players more choice in this instance because the baseline functionality of Sonic is really pathetic without any of those skills, which you don't really get most of the stuff that actually makes the character usable until about halfway into your playtime. And it also doesn't help that, well, the mission structure is really bad.
You're probably wondering how the game was received by the critic class. And believe it or not, it actually got a fairly positive reception overall. It was praised for its graphics, its missions, and among other things. In my opinion, it sort of got cheerleader affected because Sonic 06 had just come out, so people probably saw the game in a much better light as a result. Game Rankings gives the average 72%, whereas Metacritic has it as a 69 out of 100. Good for them.
Good for them, I guess.
Nintendo Power gave the game its highest ranking at an 8.5 out of 10, but criticized the game for the controls, correct, an unappealing story, fine subjective, and being forced to do tedious missions to progress the story, which is a reasonable complaint, and for the multiplayer mode being too similar to Mario Party, which in reality it just has the same style of minigames, and is just being dubbed unoriginal as a whole. That's a little... I think that's a bit of a stretch, that last one.
That's a pretty big stretch. I think that it's ironic that they talk about the game in this light because they're like, yeah, the controls are bad, but we're still gonna give it an 8.5 when the controls are how you interface with most of the fucking game, but that's beside the point. And I think that history has done a lot to people's perception of secret rings. Streamers and people who play this game nowadays come to a lot of the same conclusions that most people do, which is that Sonic and the Secret Rings is a cool game. It would be way cooler if I could actually control and play the fucking thing.
And maybe this is getting ahead of ourselves, but much like Project 06, Secret Rings also does have a fan remake in the works. It is very early on. I think only the first 2 stages are, like, playable at this point. But yeah, it is, like, restructuring the game and actually making it playable on a standard controller, which... I haven't tried it out, I haven't seen that much of it, but I can only imagine that it does wonders for the gameplay experience.
I cannot imagine it would do anything less than making it an actual functional video game. A lot of the problems will still remain. However, we go from the, this is borderline unplayable at times to, this game's all right. Which really is the thing that I think I want to, like, emphasize when I talk about Secret Rings. I think if this game had real controls, my opinion on it would be a lot different. But it's unfortunately burdened with the suffering of, damn, this shit is not fun at all to play. Oh, and we'll get to a certain boss fight in this game that is absolutely abhorrent. Don't you worry, we'll talk about it. But yes, we're gonna talk about the story now. And I like the story in Secret Rings. I do not think it is a masterpiece, but I think that it is strong enough to where it will be able to kind of stand on its own 2 feet, tell its own thing, and also still be pretty interesting, all things considered, you know?
Right. Before we really get into it, though, I do have something that I want to point out. When the game was released, pre-orders from Target came with a pre-order bonus, which was a DVD which contained a digital comic adaptation produced by Archie.
Alberto at it again. No, I'm joking. I'm fucking with you.
This is valid. This is valid.
It's valid. It's just funny that Archie just shows up randomly. You know, we get the jump scare, right?
So yes, Ian Flynn wrote and Tracy Yardley did the art. We're not going to cover it here because it's basically just a summary of the prologue up until Pirate Storm. The one thing that I do find actually very interesting about this is because he does mention, Sonic does, to Shara, that Shadow and Fang were in the Arabian Nights world as doubles when they weren't in the original game. And also saying that the Babylon Rogues would not be surprising to him to show up here either.
Yes. Which, that's fair, right, valid, makes sense.
Right. And, again, sticking to Archie, it kind of implies that it's specifically the Archie canon version of the game's events. I'm not going to get into it here. We've had enough of that. The gist is that it's very interesting how this is one of the few occasions, because this game released 2007, right?
Yes, 2007, yes.
Yeah, so this is like one of the few cases of like Archie actually being integrated and being part of like a game promotional instead of just being like some random adaptation that would be included as a B story, as would be more common in Archie as time would go on.
Well, this is post Ken, the Archie had a little bit more self-respect for itself at this time, right? Anyways, let's talk about the story. All right, so our story begins with Sonic, like a bum, napping on the couch and reading The 1001 Arabian Nights. By the way, if you couldn't tell, we didn't really mention it, but yeah, this entire story revolves around The 1001 Arabian Nights. Most people, including myself, don't really have a frame of reference for these stories because, I'll be real, they're not very prevalent in Western fiction outside of stuff like, like Aladdin and, like general stuff like that. I don't know, Thief and the Cobbler, maybe? Who fucking knows?
Yeah, I'm going to be real with you. My basis of understanding of these characters comes from fucking Fate Grand Order. So tell me.
Of course it does. Yeah. But basically, the summary of the 1001 Arabian Nights is that there is a prince or king who forces a woman he wants to marry a woman, I'm pretty sure is what it is. And the woman does not want to get married to this person, right? So in order to basically satiate the man, in order to sort of trick him, she begins to tell him a story every night and then promises him that if he can stay awake during the story, that she will marry him. He, in fact, does not stay awake during most of the stories. So 1001 nights pass. As a result, I don't really know what happens after, but that's the basis of the story, and that's where a lot of these tales come from. So, Sonic, when waking up, tries to reach for an alarm clock going off and ends up grabbing a large ring. And in doing so, becomes the bearer of the ring. It's like being the bearer of the lamp. Out of the 1001 Arabian Nights, our partner character for this game, Shara the Genie, appears. She tells Sonic that an evil entity from her world named Razor Jin. Dude, that's like an old... Yeah.
Old meme. The unks are at it again.
Yeah, the unks are at it again. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. Is absorbing the power of the book and causing the pages of the book to disappear bit by bit, inadvertently destroying the world. His power can be unleashed into the real world unless the legendary blue hedgehog told of in the stories can stop him. To seal a contract between the two of them, Shara gives Sonic a small ring to wear, and upon rubbing it, is asked for a wish for her to grant. He sneezes from a cold and jokingly asks for some handkerchiefs. This is relevant somehow. After that, the wish is granted, and hundreds of handkerchiefs appear in his house or apartment. We don't know. But then they decide to travel into the world of the Arabian Nights, and they fly into the book on a magic carpet.
And this leads us into the first world, quote-unquote, of the game, the Lost Prologue, which are the literal, pages of the book Sonic is running through. You can think of it as, the transition from the real world into the world of the book.
And again, like we had mentioned, this is all tutorial land. A lot of loading screens, a lot of bullshit. It's very annoying. But after the first world, Sonic and Shara are met by Eraser Jin, who... While Sonic basically just says, yeah, man, I've faced too many of you fucking guys before, stop being a bitch, Eraser Jin begins to call him a rat. To which Sonic responds, I'm not a rat, I'm a hedgehog. And Eraser Jin and Sonic fight for a bit, and he eventually realizes, maybe you're pretty strong. I have an idea. Let's get you to do my dirty work for me. He then places a curse on Sonic by firing a flaming arrow at his heart, which does hit. However, it does not kill him. The flame, however, still burns. Eraser Jin then explains that when the flame goes out, Sonic will die. The only way Eraser will lift the curse is if he brings him the 7 world rings scattered throughout the worlds of the Arabian Nights. So with no other options, Sonic sets out to find the rings along with Shara in hopes of understanding the rings' power and stopping Eraser Jin. Now, there is a line of dialogue in this sequence where Eraser Jin mentions something equivalent to Shara and is almost goading her. This is important for a variety of reasons. It's a narrative technique called foreshadowing.
Yes. So, as they go through, the first place Sonic visits is the Sand Oasis. It is exactly what you think it is. Very, medieval era Middle East type architecture will be found here, where he and Shara find the ruler of the Arabian Nights, King Shahryar. And here we also learn that all the characters in the book take on the appearance of people Sonic knows. And Shahryar here looks and sounds like Dr. Eggman. A very funny, parallel character to put on Shahryar of all people, because, you mentioned how the actual, the 1001 Tales are. Shahryar is the king in that story. The narrator, her name is Scheherazade, I believe is how it's pronounced.
Scheherazade.
Scheherazade,
Yes.
which she's not in this game, but I like to think if she was, parallel to someone, it would be Rouge.
It would. Also, there's also the argument one could make that Scheherazade, Shara, is essentially a dictator, as she is the one essentially dictating or narrating the story. We also didn't mention this as well, but the way this game's cutscenes are presented are that of a parchment storybook. This is something that we also see in the next game following this, but these cutscenes are a lot more static. With still frames, bits of action here or there. The art is very nice, but they're very, 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 very static in that way, right?
Right, the actual animated cutscenes are very few and far between in this game, which it's a stylistic choice at the end of the day. Maybe you could also argue that it was convenient for budgetary reasons as well. But either way, it still fits the theme of the game very well.
Yes.
Sonic accuses him of being behind the motion of events, but Shara stops him and reminds Sonic that either she or Shahryar know who Eggman is. And after a talk, Eraser kidnaps Shahryar by having a pterosaur swoop down and snatch the king. This leads Sonic to feel begrudgingly the need to save him to the next world, the Dinosaur Jungle. With this game being set up with the mission structure that we didn't really go that much into when talking about the gameplay. So yes, the way that this game is structured is that each world is broken up into a large amount of missions that you need to do very specific things in order to complete the mission. And to be completely honest, it also is a bit of a miss as well because the game does not really tell you what missions you need to do in order to progress the story.
They basically expect you to figure it out. Now, obviously, with the gift of hindsight and online information, people have compiled pretty extensive documentation about what you need to do to actually finish the game. But essentially, it's a crapshoot if you had none of that. So you're basically playing a bunch of random missions, and most of them are tedious as fuck.
With the mission structure, as I was saying, you can either go further into the jungle or deeper into Sand Oasis. And in Sand Oasis, you meet Alibaba, who is Tails' counterpart, and you fight this world's boss, Sand Scorpion. After you defeat this boss, and after all other bosses, they will all drop one of the 7 world rings. When Sonic grabs the yellow rings from the Scorpion, he feels a sharp pain across his body. And the information received tells him whoever grants all the rings will be offered as a sacrifice to open the gateway between worlds. So this is why ultimately Eraser wants Sonic to be the one to collect the rings, because in his view, he needs a sacrifice.
Yes, there has to be at least one body spent in order to get out of the book, which is the gateway between worlds, essentially, so he can go to the real world and start causing havoc. Also, Dino, it's a jungle.
Wicked, wow.
Dino. Yo, why did you say it like that, bro?
I mean, look, I'm gonna be real. I kind of wish the Crossworld stage had a remix of that. And
why didn't they have a remix of it? They're such fucking cowards, bro.
We can't have shit in Detroit, man. So anyway, after this, Sonic moves into the Evil Foundry, an industrial-like setting where Sonic finds Eraser within and leaves him to summon the Ifrit Golem, a fire giant. Sonic uses Time Break to let himself and Shara escape to properly plan how to fight this thing, as it's on fire, they can't touch it. But I will also say, using game mechanics as part of the narrative is honestly really cool, and I wish more games in general would just do that.
Yeah, I do like this, that the fact that they actually have an ability and then they contextualize it within a cutscene, and they're like, hey, we can't fight this thing, there's no way, it's too powerful and it's too hot, we gotta get out of here. Also, who's gonna rock the place? This is, look man, people joke about this track, but I actually really like this one. Well, this will be saved when we talk more about the music. I think Secret Ring's soundtrack is kind of like a weird mix of like, oh, these are bad and kind of mid, right? And, oh, this is actually pretty solid for what it's worth.
Yeah, it's very unique. Like, we'll get more into it, but Secret Rings, I think in general, I have pretty positive feelings about the soundtrack.
I think the soundtrack is solid. I do not think it is necessarily pretty good or pretty bad, but I think it finds a good middle ground where there are certain songs that I think are awesome, and then other songs where I'm really not that hot on. But at the very least, I really think the biggest detriment is that you have to hear so much of 7 Rings in Hand. But again, that's a separate conversation from when we talk about the soundtrack. Let's keep going.
They meet back with Alibaba and tells Sonic to go find his friend Sinbad. He may have a way to defeat the Golem. This leads them to the levitated ruin to free a trapped Sinbad, who in this world is Knuckles' counterpart, and his advice is to just splash some water on him, and not taking that kindly, Sonic replies sarcastically, and the two bicker much like the real-world Sonic and Knuckles.
Also, I have to say, Levitated Ruin from a visual perspective is awesome. This is something that I think Secret Rings does really well, and this is one of the few things I think that this on-rails style does well for Sonic. They do a really good job with camera work in this game. When you jump off of something and you're floating through the air, the perspectives that you get out of it are really nice. It makes some really cool shots where they emphasize like the velocity you're going at or how intense something is. Like when it's like cutscene stuff and like it's not interactive gameplay, but from a cinematic perspective, it does look really cool and it does add gravitas to the area that you're in generally, right? Levitated Ruin is a really good example of that. I like it a lot from that perspective.
Right. Before he was interrupted, he tells Sonic to get the Water Blue Ring. That particular ring has the ability to control storms, and that can be used to douse the Golem. This leads Sonic to Pirate Storm, and after defeating the pirates and getting the ring, Shara stops Sonic and gives him a relic. And it looks like a golden ball, and she says Sonic can use it as a last resort against Eraser. They then go back to Evil Foundry to fight the Golem, they douse it and defeat it. Then the Golem leaves behind a ticking time bomb, which Sonic kicks into the air, exploding, and it leaves behind the red ring, this one containing the emotion of rage.
Is it not also that after he kicks the bomb, the whole foundry starts to collapse in on itself? So you then have to go from the center of the foundry where you fought the Ifrit all the way out on a timer, which I think, again, it's small, but stuff like that is like cool. It's a cool concept. I like that.
Yeah. It makes the game a bit more engaging. Yeah.
Oh man.
Uh-oh.
I'll say it. So they then go to the Skeleton Dome.
There's a papyrus joke I can make here, but I'm not gonna.
I mean, bro, she be giving me Skeleton Dome, if you know what I'm saying, bro.
That can't feel good at all.
Oh, also, the level design in this level is particularly abhorrent.
Yeah.
Hero and Pirate Storm are absolutely the worst part of the game. 100%, without question.
Yeah, so then inside they meet the undead King Solomon, and as he's a skeleton, doesn't necessarily have a particular counterpart from Sonic's world, but for fun, let's just say he's Gerald, alright?
Yo. Without Meikawa on watch, he's probably molding.
Solomon was cursed by Eraser to exist like this and asked Sonic to find the resurrected 40 thieves to gather the pieces of Solomon's body back. In doing so, Solomon tells Sonic he must face Eraser directly in his lair, being told that he is a genie of the lamp, and as such, Shara is a genie of the ring. And as Solomon grows weary, Sonic goes to the final world, Night Palace, which is Eraser's residence. And Night Palace, along with Levitated Ruin, generally the best levels of the game.
I think that Night Palace has some of the best music in the whole game. Alongside that, I think that the way in which it hypes up the game's final confrontation is awesome. Unfortunately, you are still dealing with Secret Rings mechanics, but yes, the level and the sense of perspective, scale, and how they really frame everything in the level is really awesome. I love Night Palace, and I think it does such a good job of really getting you hyped for that final confrontation.
And when Sonic finds Eraser Jin inside, you can either collect the last world ring available or confront him directly. When you collect the ring, according to Sonic the one filled with sadness, Shara reveals that Eraser is the same genie from Aladdin and the Magic Lamp. A very funny thing if when you are a young kid in the 2000s and your only context to the Arabian Nights is the Disney Aladdin movie.
Also, something, Robin Williams, copyright infringement, Disney moment, etc. So on top of this, right? So we glossed over just a tad this whole it's like a small battle. It's the worst boss in the entire series. So the track that plays is called "It Has Come to This," which is not a great track. However, it blares in your ears as you are wrestling with the fact that Eraser Jin's mechanics don't make sense. You are dealing with broken controls. You are dealing with really poor hit detection. You only have a set amount of rings in boss fights. You can't collect more on average, specifically for this one, if I'm pretty sure. And it is a extremely unpleasant experience, top to bottom. It sucks fucking ass. It's not good. This boss is fucking dog shit. And I don't say that in just like a whatever way. No, I really do mean it. When I was playing this game, obviously when in my quest to complete a bunch of Sonic games when I was younger, I do vividly remember having a very particularly rage-inducing experience against Eraser Jin, especially in the later parts of the fight, because it doesn't fucking work half the time. It would be a cool encounter if it did, but unfortunately, it doesn't.
Yeah, mechanically, it's just kind of a nightmare to deal with.
And this is really the crux of what we're talking about. Look at how, unique this game is from a visual perspective, from an idea perspective, from, what it's trying to do with the characters and the stories in the world of the Arabian Nights. And then think about how, essentially, it's just a complete disaster from a mechanical perspective. So much of this good stuff is being ruined by the fact that there is no actual consistent way to play this game meaningfully. It fucking sucks.
It's unfortunate because, as you said, everything else around this game is so strong, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. We'll talk about it when we get to it.
Yeah, we'll talk about it, yeah.
So after this fight, God willing, you manage to get through it, Eraser Jin escapes and locks himself behind a door, telling Sonic it can be unlocked with the remaining world rings. So after you collect all of them, the door opens, which unlocks the last chapter as one final mission. And thus begins the endgame. As Eraser convinces Shara to give him the world rings, she does so, revealing that in the past, she and Eraser were romantically involved once before, and she wants to be together with him again, and it's also heavily implied that it was an abusive relationship on top of that.
On top of this, there is dialogue from Eraser Jin where he is essentially trying to manipulate those feelings and coax them out of Shara. I think back in the day, this was interpreted in a very specific way because you know of how internet culture was. And I do agree that there should have been more precedent for the foreshadowing and maybe showing that Shara is still deeply scarred from that relationship and that she doesn't know how to process it. But as a result, it causes an issue where the game and its writing is not in lockstep with what it's trying to portray, right? I guess they're trying to show throughout the story that, like, Shara and Sonic are, like, trying to trust each other more, but she's hesitant. But at the same time, it doesn't feel like there's enough time given to it. And that's really the big problem with this twist. Albeit, you do feel bad for Shara knowing this is sort of implied and sort of stated, right?
Yeah, I mean, on top of that, as you said, the game's writing does not really do that great of a job as, like, portraying that. I think mainly just because this was written in 2000, that idea was just not as prevalent, and maybe they just assumed the player would pick up on context clues more often than not. If this game was made today, it would be a lot more heavy-handed on that aspect of the story, 100%.
Yeah, I think that there is something. I think that there is something there that is, like, unique enough when it comes to the way that the story is being written, at least right now, for there to be expanded depth and ground to, like, Shara and her relationship to Eraser. But again, different time, different era, different priorities, so on and so forth. But let's continue. So as Shara is ready to do this, Sonic basically uses his second of 3 wishes to tell Shara to do what she believes is right. But the conflicting desire causes Shara's mind to basically snap. She freezes in place, doesn't know what to do. Eraser then decides to try and sacrifice Sonic. But Shara, trying to do right, blocks the blade with her body, causing her to die in Sonic's arms. Sonic then tries to use his last wish to tell her to not die, and to make it so they could go back to the way things were. She does not have the power to grant that wish, but what she does do is make the relics she gave Sonic revert back to its original form. An oil lamp. Eraser Jin, now having the 7 world rings, transforms into a more powerful gem, okay, this is a little bit of a tongue twister, but it's Alf Lalela Walela, which is the Arabic title for 1001 Nights. This is cute. Okay, I like it. Intending to destroy the world of the Arabian Nights, remake it in his image, and then move into Sonic's world to do the same. However, the transformation is incomplete, and he still needs to absorb Sonic in order to achieve full power. Sonic, and this is a really rare instance of this, feels some very specific emotions that a certain company wouldn't let him feel nowadays. No. And begins to, without warning, absorb 3 of the world rings from Eraser's body. These are sadness, rage, and hatred. The feelings Sonic most strongly feel at this moment watching Shara die. He takes them into his body and transforms into a one-time only form that we will never see again, Darkspine's Sonic.
The design of Darkspine Sonic, it does evoke the Arabian Nights feel 100%. And honestly, like, a part of me kind of wonders if this also was inspired by the Dark Super Sonic from Sonic X as well. This would have been, like, 2007. So, yeah, the 3rd season would have just, like, finished releasing or what have you.
I think Darkspine Sonic is one of these really interesting, like, forms that we will never get to see ever again. He is locked in the Sega mandate cage because of how the transformation is induced, aka it's not done out of purity, but it is done out of intense emotional frustration. Ironically enough, this is also when Maekawa was still writing for the franchise, and I think portraying Sonic having these emotions is good, and I like that this exists as an alternate super form to show that, yeah, Sonic's not fucking happy about this, and he's gonna beat the ever-living shit out of Eraser Jin in order to do it.
Right, and I mean, nowadays, Super Sonic has been contextualized as this sort of, like, heavenly, angelic, almost like as you said, divine form. So it's really cool in these like alternate scenarios where we see Sonic draw from more negative power sources, you know?
And it's not necessarily in a way that like invalidates like the Chaos Emeralds or something like that. This is an alternate source of power that I think it's okay if Sonic gets more of these forms that are not solely based on positive energy or, you know, like good things, right? To me, Super Sonic 2 kind of feels like that, where it's like they really tried to emphasize the fact that like Sonic is using all of his energy and is entering like again, I mean, it's basically just Super Saiyan 2, where that form was induced by pure rage, and then it's the calmness of the rage until it explodes in an instant, right? Which they tried very hard to do that, like, over the years. Well, not over the years. They tried very hard to do that with Super Sonic 2. But, again, it's like, I want more of this. If we're gonna have... I would simply just like more super forms to come back into this franchise. More forms are good, not bad.
Right. And look, as far as Iizuka's concerns about that go, like, I get it. I understand you don't want to deal with the power scaling problem, but consider the counter argument of it's cool though.
Yeah, you know, cool beats power scaling. All power scaling is stupid. It's dumb. You should have brought back Hypersonic.
That's a conversation for another time. In Darkspine Sonic's form, we now move to the final boss fighting Alphaleo Walea in the space between worlds. The boss fight here is kind of interesting, in which Shara's like spirit is still communicating to Sonic, telling him what his abilities are in this form. You basically have the ability to refill the soul gauge at will, and you have to use time break and speed break at the right times in order to damage Alphaleo Walea.
The thing about this fight is that unfortunately you are still beholden to the controls, but I do think it is a marginally better fight than Eraser Jin. That's not saying much, but it is still at least interesting enough to hold a spot in the Sonic Final Boss pantheon. Also, another interesting point, all of Sonic's attacks directly at Alphaleo Walea is that they are all punches and kicks. There is no energy blast, there is no nothing. He is just actively beating the shit out of him.
Respect, honestly. It's fun when a character that normally uses their special abilities or whatever just says fuck it and starts throwing hands.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Alright, well, we beat Alphaleo Walea. And after a battle, Darkspine Sonics and Eraser return back to the world. The world rings being ejected from both his and Sonic's body. And Sonic now holding the Lamp of the Genie in his hands. Deciding that he now has 3 wishes. Controlling Eraser, he demands Eraser Jin has to bring Shara back to life, which he does. He has to restore the world of the Arabian Nights. And then forces Eraser back into the lamp permanently. Shara then returns to life, grieving for Eraser despite everything. Sonic then asks for one last wish from Shara. A mountain of handkerchiefs so she can cry for as long as she needs to. Which, people clown on this scene a lot, and like, it is pretty silly, but again, it's meant to be more cute than silly, and I can accept it in that regard, you know?
Right, I mean, it's meant to be a bookend sort of thing, like the story coming full circle, you know? I mean, you know what? I'm gonna say this. To me, this is the exact same as the sea salt ice cream line at the end of 358 over 2 days. Because, yeah, they clown on it for the same reasons, but the point of that is supposed to be that the handkerchiefs to Sonic and Shara represent the establishment of their relationship, much like the sea salt ice cream does to Roxas and Xion. Come on, people, let's use our brains a little bit.
You know, themes and such. Sorry, dude. Hype moments and aura only, TM. Anyways, we then get a mid-credit scene where Sonic and Shara drop Eraser's lamp into the lava in Evil Foundry, permanently ending his life. As Shara narrates that Sonic ran endlessly before returning to his world, having more adventures with Ali Baba and Sinbad along the way, but says those stories are for another time, not happening, and then bids farewell to Sonic, the legendary hedgehog. The post-credit scene shows that the book Sonic was reading at the beginning, its title transforming from Aladdin and the Magic Lamp to Sonic and the Secret Rings. Now, before we talk about all the extra fun facts, let's talk about some of the, in-between stuff, because I do think we missed some in-between stuff. So graphically, let's talk about this game. This game is really pretty and really nice.
Yeah.
It's actually, It's a good looking game. I think it looks pretty solid for the time.
I mean, yeah, a lot of people clown on like this is the 6th generation of games, right?
No, seventh
gen. A lot of people do clown on like the 7th generation of games graphically, but honestly, look back at those games specifically one by one. They all do stand the test of time. Yeah, maybe they're a little dated, but they still look fantastic for what they are. And honestly, in many cases, and I would even include Secret Rings in this, it even stands against games currently today.
Yeah, I think that there's a level of art direction and inspiration here that's really unique. We kind of said it at the beginning of the video, but like the tale of the Arabian Nights and 1001 Nights is not something that often gets brought up or referenced in fiction or, Western or Japanese fiction that much. Like, I think that outside of Aladdin, which most people don't know a lot of the other stories, so stuff like Sinbad, right, and so on and so forth, and Alibaba. But like, I think that there is one thing that this game does really well, and that's really capture the Arabic aesthetic and vibes of those stories and tries to really translate them into something that feels tangible. And that's really cool because you don't get to see that often. Creates a lot of really interesting dynamics in how the game looks, and its presentation really handles that. I'm all for more stuff like this, by the way. I would love to see more representation of Arabic culture and Arabic stories like this, especially because, it's cool, it's unique, it's different. And
Right. And yeah, and that sentiment also carries to the game's music, because even though you still have the Sonic's like standard stuff of like heavy guitars, drums, beats, and all that stuff, there's a lot of like Middle Eastern instruments used here, mainly sitars, but like there is a lot of it peppered in through the game's soundtrack.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's one of those things where like, alongside it, I'm pretty sure not every level track is vocal. There are some that do not have vocals in them. And you could definitely tell the ones that don't and the ones that do. But even then, it's like you can tell that there's a level of effort and care that's going into everything. I'm pretty sure this game's soundtrack was mostly produced by Steve Conte, who does Seven Rings in Hand and does the game's outro or the endings credits theme, which is Just a Chance, which is a pretty solid song, all things considered. But most of the game's music is good. Again, not every track is a winner. Dino Jungle. Dino. It's a jungle.
Wicked Wild.
Dino. Wicked Wild is like, alright, man. But Let the Speed Mend, it's alright. Evil Foundry, kind of hype. Unawakening Float for Night Palace is pretty good. And then I'm pretty sure the rest of the tracks in this game are all instrumental. And those tracks are like fine, they're pretty unassuming. I made mention about how I feel about it. Just come to this. I don't like that song really at all, and it bothers the shit out of me. And then Seven Rings in Hand, the game's main theme, is really good, but you hear it way too fucking much for its own good. So I'll listen to it every once in a while, but I do get inadvertent PTSD when I listen to it.
So now let's talk about the fun facts about this game here. So while we did kind of touch on this a teeny tiny bit, and while Sonic does not explicitly have a counterpart in the Arabian Nights world, he does inadvertently play the role of Aladdin in the story. This is something that the next game that is in this common line will do a lot more strongly, and I kind of do feel like that if there was a third game, they would lean into that a lot more. But yes, Sonic virtually is Aladdin in this story, as he does have the Genie of the Ring, Shara, and ends by forcing the Genie of the Lamp to grant his wishes.
Yes, which is, ha 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 ha.
So, and also, this is the first Sonic game for the Wii, as you can imagine. And of course, while the genie in this proper story could not bring people back from the dead, you can kind of rationalize that the state of the stories being in a weird fluctuating place was just Sonic being able to take advantage of the situation and bring Shara back from the dead. And when Eraser is summoning the Ifrit Golem, he does recite a spell, I believe actually in Arabic, and it does mention Iblis. So while Iblis is the Arabic word for devil, you can kind of rationalize it in this game that it is the same creature from 06 in a different form.
Kind of. Well, there's also reference to make that, like, maybe this is getting a little ahead of ourselves, but in Black Knight, the spell that Merlina conjures, I'm pretty sure is the same one that Eraser Jin conjures.
Yes, so
right?
it is, and so we can, I guess with that context, we can rationalize it as just a basic summoning spell.
Yeah, at least in the storybook worlds, which again, this is never going to be brought up ever again, because
Sega hates fun, yeah.
We'll save it for the Black Knight video, but meet potential sub-series.
Right. And in the game's multiplayer mode, which I know we didn't really talk about, but there really is not that much meat to that party mode. It was described as like basically Mario Party, but it is just a bunch of mini games to play with your friends. It doesn't even have the Mario Party style board. It's just mini games.
Yeah, and nothing else.
But yeah, Shadow is playable in that multiplayer mode, and as such, this is the first time Shadow appears in a game without Rouge. Very fascinating.
Yeah, that is pretty funny that this is the first time he appears in a game without Rouge. Like, what the fuck?
And also, this game actually has the most vocal tracks in any Sonic game, being 10 in total. Worth a Chance, Wicked Wild, The Palace That Was Found, No Way Through, Wide of Sky, Unawaking Float, Poison Spear, Now It Has Started, Blue on the Run, and It Has Come to This.
How it started was the fucking theme of Ifrit. Ifrit Golem had a special vocal track?
Fascinating, isn't it, folks? And on top of that, despite the game being a spin-off, even though everything now with the lore team and all that has been consolidated to make sure that definitely everything is in fact canon, even back in the day, this game was considered to be fully canon because Sonic does reference the events of the game in Sonic Generations.
And I'm pretty sure Black Knight is also in that,
I mean, I guess by extension, sure. And as we mentioned at the beginning of the game, Eraser Jin constantly taunts Sonic by calling him a rat, and Sonic corrects him by saying he's a hedgehog. The reason for this is actually because it's wordplay in the Japanese script that's just not translated to English, because in Japanese, the word for hedgehog is Hari Nezumi, and that word contains the Japanese word for rat being Nezumi, so it's just Eraser shortening the word.
That's really funny. That's like really, really, really funny for no reason.
And this is the first 3D Sonic game since Sonic 3D Blast to have only Sonic playable in the main story mode. A trend that would unfortunately continue far into all of the 2010s.
Yeah, and you're gonna see a lot of that.
Yeah, but that is a story for another time. And as such, while this was definitely shorter, we can say definitely that Secret Rings, I do think it was a worthwhile effort. Unfortunately, though, not a very fun game to play, but everything else around it is generally very positive. It's just unfortunate that the gameplay leaves a lot to be desired with this game, right?
Well, I feel like I can say this pretty definitively at this point that there is nothing inherently wrong with Secret Rings at a base. Like, as you can probably tell by our discussion here, we like everything around this game except actually playing it, you know? Because actually playing it is like CBT torture. It sucks balls. It's not fun at all. It's kind of shit. But I can't help but have parts of this game that I really enjoy from an outside perspective. It's just you can't ask me to play it again, unfortunately.
Right. I mean, I get it, you know? It's kind of... It's unfortunate because the game is like really fun and it's fun to like experience what the game has to offer. You can even kind of rationalize it as like you're being so frustrated it somehow loops back into being weirdly enjoyable, you know? But at the same time, there's just so much that you want from this game to be, and it just is not. I guess, funnily enough, much like Sonic 06 in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's also the other half of this, which is like, man, the fuck is going on?
I mean, as we mentioned, again, this project completely started from it being wanting them to port Sonic 06 to the Wii. And yeah, it just wasn't possible. That's why we got this game. But like, it's just very funny that's how it started, you know?
Yeah, I mean, one must simply ask the question, right? Like, why was it like this? Like why did they do all that?
Why do you feel the need to do all that?
Why do you do all that, man?
Also, something we also didn't really talk about, the voice acting in this game is like pretty leagues above like what we were having within the main games at this point in time.
Yeah, this is a interesting discussion, but it really feels like after 06, I think there was either a direction shift or a change in how voice acting was done within Sonic Team across the board. Because, like, I don't think that this game is, like, the best work from the 4Kids cast. Absolutely not. That easily goes to Black Knight. Without question. Black Knight's voice cast and voice work is it's impeccable. It's easily the best the Sonic cast has sounded. I mean, one could argue it's the best Sonic dub ever made. I don't know if that's a controversial opinion, but, like, It is an opinion. But it is definitely a very large step up from everything we had gotten prior. The characters actually sound like they're emoting more, and there's sort of a level of urgency to their voice acting. It's, when Sonic roars out in anger as Darksiders Sonic, it actually feels like there's a little bit of, like, malice behind it, and you're like, oh, okay. You can actually believe what's coming out of the character's mouth at that point, you know?
I only wonder, Jason Griffith, did you study Sean Schimmel for that?
I mean, he probably did.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. Everything about this game is just so interesting to look into. But then when it comes time to actually playing the game, you're like, no, never mind.
It's pretty fucking weird, right? It's just such a... This whole game is just fucking weird, man. That's the nicest way I can put it. It's a game for weirdos. It's just a weird experience. But at the same time, I'd rather this than 100 more mid-ass spin-offs and bad games that don't actually have anything interesting to say. So, you know, you take what you can, right?
Right. I think on that note, we can end our discussion here and talk about what's next on the horizon. And for us, we see two paths. The next big game on the list is Sonic Unleashed. Definitely. However, I think it's more important that to paint a fuller picture here, take a little breather, take a stopgap, and we move on to a more handheld Sonic on the horizon, because even though we talked about her in Sonic 06, we did overlook Blaze and where she came from. So, folks, next time we talk, next time we're here, we will be discussing probably best of 2D modern Sonic. That is the absolute Dimps classic, Sonic Rush and Sonic Rush Adventure.
I hope you guys are ready for a lot of glazing, because Sonic Rush, in spite of some of its problems, which, oh, don't worry, we'll be talking about Dimp Syndrome in full force, is still such an immaculate experience, and it's so much fun. And hey, don't worry, Rush Adventure fans, I will be giving that game the love it deserves, because despite its problems, I still think Rush Adventure is a pretty damn good game, all things considered. So, get excited, because we have a lot to talk about with the Rush duology. Right there, right on. Right there.
Back to back. And spinning on your back. Back to back.
Back to back. No, it takes back. We'll see you guys then.
First of all, your Jordans are completely fake. Second, Eraserkin, you have absolutely no maidens. And finally, you, my friend, haven't even thought about buying Spotify Premium.
Want a break from